Well, when you hear the Big Ten fight songs, you know it's time for another edition of the A Few Good Men on the Big Ten podcast. Bruce Hooley, Andy Anders with you. We are 3 weeks into the season, at least for some teams. For the Ohio State Buckeyes, that's important. They get a win over the weekend against Rutgers, Michigan. Wow, with Michigan. Oh, Andy, it's not looking good for the Michigan Wolverines and head coach Jim Harbaugh, nor is it looking good for James Franklin and the Penn State Nittany Lions. We'll get into all that today as I grab something to hold my microphone up a little bit higher. How are you? What's your impressions of OSU Rutgers?
Well, I'm doing good, Bruce. Thank you for asking. I really think the Ohio State Rutgers game, I think you saw a lot of things to like, a lot of improvements for Ohio State, honestly. I know there will be fans out there who will talk about the second half and how Rutgers came back, made it more of a game after it was 35-3. You finished at 49-27. Rutgers threw out. That was the most trick plays I've ever seen in a game since I've been covering the sport.
Looked like a Bobby Bowden training film there for goofy trick plays.
Bonkers. I wish my offense when I played had a throwback to a lineman. I would have loved to score a touchdown on that. But you had that. You had all the trick plays going. You had really just the backups were in for 20 out of 30 minutes probably in the second half there. And really, you're going to lose motivation. It's just human when you're beating a team like that. So I don't put as much stock into the fall off in the second half as other people might. Now, there are definitely still flaws that need fixed with this team. I think Shaun Wade still hasn't fully adjusted to the outside at corner. He got mossed, as you might say, once in that game. Yep. And obviously didn't look great against Jahan Dotson last week. I think the defensive ends, they still don't have that bell cow rush end who's getting home for sacks consistently. Cooper showed a little bit of that in week 2 against Penn State, but really nowhere. I'm surprised. I looked back at the snap counts, Bruce, and I was surprised to see Zach Harrison played as much as Tyler Friday and Javonte Jean-Baptiste because he was really unheard from against Penn State. I don't have the snap counts yet for Rutgers, but I thought he would be sort of the heir apparent given his talent and the coaching of Larry Johnson to Chase Young, and we haven't seen that yet. So some of those concerns still on defense, but I mean, Justin Fields in the passing attack looked incredible again. He's improved from last year, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on the game now.
Yeah, I'm with you pretty much all the way across the board there. As it concerns Zach Harrison and the pass rush, I thought Zach would be a guy who Ohio State might lean on to get to the quarterback. They are able to generate pressure in the middle of the line. That's going to be important. He has not yet lived up to his 5-star billing. Doesn't mean he won't. It just means the bar is so high with the Bosa brothers and Chase Young that people have outrageous expectations of a true sophomore. When it comes to the secondary, I think there's some holes there that some teams that throw the ball well, Florida, Alabama, Clemson, could exploit. But Ohio State's problem is they really don't play anybody in the Big Ten and aren't going to play anybody in the Big Ten that gives them a decent look like one of those other playoff caliber teams will. And then the other point that I would address is what Ryan Day said afterwards about Ohio State has to create more of its own energy because it can't count on the home crowd, and they
Right, looks like we might have lost Bruce there. See if we can't fix whatever's happening. Okay, well, while Bruce is having some technical difficulties on his end, guess I'll go into some other games across the Big Ten. Just want to say it was a very wild week, and I'm not fully sure what to make of it. You had Northwestern, Indiana are now the two ranked teams left in the Big Ten, and along with Wisconsin. And if you just told me before the season that would be the case, I would have called you crazy. I mean, Indiana was my Big Ten sleeper team, but I did not think they were going to go out and beat Penn State and be 3-0 to start the season and be ranked 10th in the conference and beat Michigan, no less, as well. What a start for them. I think they have some challenges that will be taken advantage of against Ohio State, specifically on offense. I know, they have a lot of weapons that have looked good at the receiver position between Ty Freifogel and Whop Fillier, and then Peyton Hendershot at tight end. But I'm still not fully sold on Michael Penix, their quarterback there. I think there's some issues with him throwing the ball downfield that, he's not going to be able to challenge the Ohio State secondary like you need to, because I think that's the main weakness that we've seen. Someone needs to test that Ohio State secondary. When Penn State was able to do it, that's when they found success moving the ball against the Buckeyes, when Clifford was able to get the ball out of his hands and get it down the field to his playmakers. Jahan Dotson, you saw him explode in the second half. I don't think Penix has the arm to test, or the accuracy, rather. He has the arm strength. I haven't seen well-rounded games from him. It's been a lot of shorter, easier throws in some of their games. He's gone downfield sometimes, too. But I think I'm not fully sold. He's a gamer, don't get me wrong. But and there you are.
There I am. Back as good as ever. So we apologize to the people who are watching us on the Chris Landry football channel on Twitch. I don't know what happened. My laptop just crapped out there, Andy. I think I gave it the old Ohio State second half effort on the laptop. We started talking about the Buckeyes in their performance in the second half, and wouldn't you know it, my internet connection or my laptop decided to start playing like the Buckeyes did in the second half. So we'll just pick up from where we were. But first, as I apologize to the people watching us on the Chris Landry football channel on Twitch, why not give you a good time to hit that follow button? When you do that, it's located at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It's the little heart, and once you do that, you'll receive an email or text notification every time we go live on the Chris Landry Football Show. Every single time, just click on the link in the message, and bam, you will be watching us live. So let's not talk about any more poor performances by anybody, Andy, or my internet will decide that it's going to take a little vacation here. I'm trying to make my head smaller on the camera shot, but I'm afraid to touch any buttons on this laptop. So I don't know if I'll look like a gigantic head man for the rest of the podcast, or if I'll be able to downsize myself a little bit. Here, did that work? Yes, that's a little bit better.
There we go.
All right. So to regather ourselves, we were talking about OSU and the whole thing with the Buckeyes not creating their own energy. Ryan Day said after the game that he felt like they need to be more accountable for creating their own energy in games. I think when you're up 35-3, you've done that. There is an inherent skepticism when you're playing Rutgers that they're going to be able to come back from 35-3. So maybe you let your guard down. Rutgers gets a little amped up when it tries one trick play and it works. And things build off of that. But in no way, shape, or form do I come out of Saturday's game thinking that Ohio State is exposed some kind of vulnerability someplace. Do you?
No. Mainly it's just the issues we've talked about before the season. It's young and inexperienced secondary. I don't look at it I'm not concerned about them getting up for opponents. Honestly, I've seen some fans that have said, oh, you got to it's not a championship mentality not to stay motivated in the second half. It's Rutgers, and Rutgers has the stigma attached to it as, having been the worst team in the Big Ten for years and years. They might not be this year. They did beat Michigan State. I think Greg Schiano has that program moving in the right direction, but you're up 35-3 against a team that has never given you any sort of a game, if you're Ohio State, at least this decade. And frankly, who wouldn't lose motivation and mail it in at that point? I know that's not the message that coaches preach, but at the end of the day, I don't think you can look at this and be all that upset if you're an Ohio State fan. They looked about as good as you could hope in the first half of that game, and then the trick plays Rutgers came out firing. You're Ohio State, you're always going to have that target on your back.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I made a little joke on Twitter today. I said, if there's ever a year where on paper you could argue that Indiana, Rutgers, and Maryland are better than Penn State, Michigan State, and Michigan, it would be 2020, right? It's like the most 2020 thing ever, that the bottom feeders in the East, traditionally, Indiana, Rutgers, and Maryland, would have an argument at this point in time, we're better than Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State, because Michigan lost to Indiana, Michigan State's lost to Rutgers, Penn State's lost to Maryland. But there's no doubt who the number one team is in the East. There's no doubt who the best team is in the Big Ten. Ohio State, they're going to have the same problem they had keeping their energy up against Rutgers all season long, because maybe Maryland keeps it interesting for a while. They're scoring. The Terps haven't shown me any ability to really play great defense. I don't think holding Penn State's offense in check is any great accomplishment. Michigan just looks inept, like they don't even want to be on the field. Let's go to Bloomington and Saturday and what happened there with a Michigan team that had every reason to fight back from its loss at home to Michigan State. All week long you hear how terrible you are, you hear how bad your coach is, you hear that the program is in disarray, and you come out and you get dominated physically and you get beat 38-21, and I watched every minute of that game and I didn't think it was as close as the final score. Did you?
Oh, no, I also watched every minute of that game. I was very interested to see it. I thought, it was a real measuring stick for Indiana and for Michigan. It was going to tell you a lot about the future of those programs, end of their seasons. You see, two totally different trajectories there, isn't there? You got Indiana's gone like this in the recent years. Michigan's going like this right now. 38-21, and like you said, not even that close. I thought that Michigan's secondary looked particularly awful. We talk about some of the concerns of Ohio State's secondary. Imagine being Michigan right now, where guys can't make a stop unless they're committing blatant pass interference. That game would have been, if all the pass interference was called in that game, I felt like there was...
Andy, I don't know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, so I don't know if...
Yeah, okay, can you...
Boy, the technical issues. See, we started talking about a team playing poorly, and you saw what happened to my internet connection, right? It just went in a dumper again. So I'm trying to figure out how I can hear you, because we can do a podcast with me reconfiguring my internet, but we can't do one if I can't hear you. I assume you can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me. All right, great. All right, why don't you... This is like, wow, I don't know what we're going to do here. Why don't we, the people on Twitch have got to be loving this, Andy. They're like, what's going on with the tech there on the A Few Good Men on the Big Ten podcast? Well, let me give people a reminder about our title sponsor while I'm doing that. And hopefully Andy will come back, or hopefully my computer will stop spinning, or something will happen. But American Betting Experts. They are our partners on the Chris Landry Football Network and on the Landry Football channel on Twitch. American Betting Experts is one of the largest licensed sports and casino vendors in the United States. We've teamed together to provide special gaming offers to all Landry Football followers and podcast listeners. Go to our website, LandryFootball.com, click on the ad located in the upper right side of the page. Pick among the gaming sites legal in your state, such as Bet, MGM, DraftKings, FanDuel, and PointsBet. Sign and instantly receive an account deposit match or risk-free bet from $100 to $1,000. It is that easy. Again, LandryFootball.com, click on the ad located in the upper right-hand side of the page, and get in the action with a special offer from American betting experts. All right, I'm going to try one thing here, Andy, and see if I can bring you back and see if I can bring us both back to the point where we can hear each other, because that is kind of important when you're doing a podcast together. I'm going to take you off the live stream for a second. Now I'm going to add you back onto the live stream, and I'm going to see if I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Answer no. I cannot. I cannot hear you. Doggone it.
Let me try.
Well, this is not good. I'll tell you what. Why don't you talk a little bit about, we touched on Harbaugh last week. Are we in agreement now, and I'll just watch your video, are we in agreement that Jim Harbaugh cannot receive a contract extension from Michigan beyond this season?
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely at this point. The only way he could salvage it, and I wish I could ask your thoughts on this a little bit here, but I think the only way he could salvage it is winning out, essentially. If you manage to come back after being kicked down and somehow beat Ohio State this year, I would say beat Penn State too, but Penn State sucks. They're 0-3. So the only way you could salvage this season for Jim Harbaugh, the only way you could maybe earn the extension, at least in my eyes, is to beat Ohio State. Now, I don't know what's going on inside the program over there, what they think of Jim Harbaugh and whether they want him to, continue coaching after this season at this point. Do they think he can it's just, what do you want as a Michigan booster, a Michigan athletic director? Are you happy with 9-10 wins every year, but pretty much never beating Ohio State, never competing for Big Ten titles? Or do you want something more than that? Because we know what Harbaugh is now. He's never going to be competing for Big Ten titles, at least not consistently, at that program.
Okay, I didn't hear a word of that, but I'm sure it was brilliant. So I don't know how we can continue doing the show if you can't hear me and I can't hear you. So I don't know what we're going to put together for today. I know we're live on Twitch, and I apologize to everybody on Twitch. I don't know what is the deal, but maybe it's Harbaugh, and the Harbaugh gremlins don't want us talking about Matt Campbell and Luke Fickell taking over for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Here are the games of this week, and then Andy and I will bow on out of here, and again, we apologize for our technical issues. Iowa at Minnesota on Friday night. Then on Saturday, Illinois, Rutgers, Penn State at Nebraska, and Indiana at Michigan State are noon games. Ohio State, Maryland is a 3:30 game. And then Wisconsin at Michigan is a 7:30 game. With Wisconsin, there we are. I hear you now, Andy.
You do?
I do, yeah.
All right. I left the stream and came back.
Okay. All right. We soldier on. Ladies and gentlemen. Because I don't have you recorded, and that's obviously important for a podcast, after I finish up talking about Wisconsin and Michigan here, I want you to go back and we'll talk about Harbaugh's situation at Michigan. The Wolverines are scheduled to play Wisconsin at 7:30 Saturday night in Ann Arbor. That game is an absolute must for Jim Harbaugh. He cannot lose consecutively to Michigan State, Indiana, and Wisconsin. Don Brown, Josh Gaddis, they don't have a coordinator in my mind that you turn the team over to with a midseason firing, and Jim Harbaugh is the kind of guy with his history at Michigan and everything. It's a really ticklish situation on making a change from him to another coach, period. It's an impossible situation to manage if you're going to depart from Jim Harbaugh in the middle of a season. It's not, I can't imagine him quitting in midstream. And I can't imagine them firing him in midstream. Can you?
No, they would not fire him during the season, especially like you said. There's no heir apparent within the program to come and take that role over. You need that interim head coach if you're going to make a mid-season firing. But I think the program has far too much respect for Jim Harbaugh still to fire him in the middle of the season. They're just not going to do it. What I was saying about Harbaugh before, the technical difficulties there, is I think the only way you can salvage this season really and maybe get a contract extension is if you win out. You need to beat Ohio State, essentially. I'd say even if you lose to Wisconsin, maybe you beat Ohio State. It might mean enough to the boosters, to the athletic directors. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I don't think there's any chance this Michigan team can beat this Ohio State team. Well, I guess there's always a chance, but they'll be very overmatched in that game.
Well, with the way they've struggled to defend the pass against Rocky Lombardi and Michael Penix. I mean, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Justin Fields are borderline unfair right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're running wide open. Michigan tried to play zone against Indiana, and they looked like you'd expect a team that plays man all the time and never practices zone to look. They had no clue what they were doing.
Yes, absolutely. They have so many holes in their secondary against the best passing attack, maybe in the country, certainly in the Big Ten, when you're talking about Ohio State. And I can't see them winning that game. I can't see it as a result. I can't see Harbaugh staying beyond this year. Although, who knows? We've seen a lot of backing from the Michigan boosters and presidents in the past. Not the boosters, the top brass, I should say. I bet the boosters behind the scenes are probably ready to move on, at least a number of them at this point. I know I would be. He hasn't met any of the expectations they had for him coming in. 9-10 wins a season, never competing for a Big Ten title, just isn't the standard they want for that program, even if it is kind of what they are as a program.
Well, let's look at their schedule. I mean, they have Wisconsin on Saturday night. Wisconsin hasn't played for 3 weeks. We assume Wisconsin's going to be cleared to play. We don't know if Graham Mertz is going to be cleared to play. If Graham Mertz doesn't play, then, I mean, you cannot lose if Wisconsin's on its third quarterback with Jack Cohn and Graham Mertz both sidelined. Mertz would be by COVID. Can you say with 100% certainty that you would expect Michigan to win at Rutgers the following week? I mean, Rutgers beat Michigan State and East Lansing, and Michigan State beat Michigan. I know that doesn't work very often the way that works out, but that'd be like the Super Bowl to Rutgers and to Greg Schiano to knock off Michigan.
Absolutely. They'll have all the motivation and reasoning to probably unveil 15 new trick plays that we didn't see against Ohio State. I would not be shocked to see Rutgers win that game. But Jim Harbaugh thinks they're close. So, I mean.
Yeah, but close to what?
Close to what?
Close to an implosion? I mean, this gives me no pleasure to say. I know it gives some Ohio State fans pleasure to say. I take more of a long view of things, and Ohio State football being good as an alum, I love seeing that. But I love seeing Ohio State, A, prepared for the postseason, which I don't think the Big Ten prepares Ohio State for the postseason at all. And I grew up during the 10-year war, which I know was way before your time, but it's hard for an Ohio State fan to ever say, yeah, this Michigan game is one that if we lose, it's not the end of the world. But you do have to lose a rivalry game now and then, or it's not a rivalry. And this rivalry it's just not. It's not a rivalry. I've gone back and forth with people on Twitter who say, I said earlier this year that Ohio State's game at Indiana looks like their toughest game. Oh, you're crazy. What about Michigan? And I'm like, if you go back over the last 20 years and total up the number of teams in the Big Ten that have beaten Ohio State more than Michigan has, it's a long list. Purdue, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Nebraska's beaten them once, which is all Michigan's beaten them in the last 20 years. I'm probably leaving some out. I mean, it's just, you don't ever want to lose a rivalry game, but like I said, Andy, if you don't ever lose one, it's not a rivalry.
Yeah. I think a lot of Ohio State fans, frankly, this era of dominance comes right off the heels of the John Cooper era. And I think that's why you see a lot of people still say, how many times they ruined us back in the 90s. It's turnabout is fair play and all of that. But you're right. It has gone on for so long now. This era of dominance in Michigan, the gap has grown wider in recent years.
Oh yeah, and it's widening. Yeah,
it's widening.
Grown wider. It's much wider than it was under Tressel. The margin last year, Ryan Day's first year, was bigger than the margin in Urban's final year, and Ryan Day already this year. It's been reported that when Harbaugh tried to make some kind of a point about Al Washington, a former Michigan assistant, by the way, coaching without a mask, it ticked Ryan Day off to the point where he told his team, we're going to try to score 100 on him. And Andy, that seemed like in the summertime when he said it, a bit of idle hope. I'm not so sure they can't score 75. I'm really not so sure they can't.
No, I'm not at all either. I think Ryan Day loves to send underhanded messages. He's never going to be public about it. He'll never come out and say if he runs up the score in that game. We'll see if he does. We'll see if Ohio State's able to put 75 on the board. But Ryan Day's never wanted to come out and say that's why he's doing it. But he'll absolutely do it and not say it to the public. We've seen that in the past. I think the Maryland game last year, after murmurings that they were the one who leaked the Chase Young info with the travel. There's been some interesting happenings in the past with Ryan Day, and perhaps sending messages, and even just the fact that he's willing to put up style points like Urban didn't when it comes to the college football playoffs, and realizing it's about looking good as well as just winning the games. So I think that'll be a pretty big blowout in Ohio State's favor this year. I know when I make my predictions for that game, I'll predict a big margin of victory for Ohio State, assuming Justin Fields isn't out with COVID or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. The gap is huge right now, and I don't know how you can be happy with that if you're a Michigan booster, someone who gets the program. And this all ties back into what we were talking about. Jim Harbaugh has to be on his way out at Michigan, or else you're settling for a huge gap from Ohio State, never competing for a Big Ten title, at least not consistently. Are you happy with where you are as a program? I know that's not your standard. So.
No, when you look at programs in the Big Ten, who let's just do it on a momentum index. Indiana has more momentum than Michigan. Rutgers has more momentum than Michigan. Penn State's 0-3, but I think they still have more momentum than Michigan. Maryland has more momentum than Michigan. Ohio State clearly does. So they have the least momentum of anybody in the Big Ten East. And he's in year 6. And that's just unacceptable. Right. That's unacceptable at any school. That is clearly unacceptable. And it gives me no pleasure, because I remember him as a player. I thought at Stanford and San Diego, he did a great job. I thought he was perfect for the Big Ten. I thought we'd have the same kind of back and forth snarkiness with he and Urban that we had with Woody and Bo, and it just hasn't materialized. And they've got to be looking for. He's got to be looking for a soft landing, space-saving exit, and they have to be as well. And now that question becomes, if Luke Fickell is the hot guy, or one of the hot guys, and for those who watch the podcast here on the Landry Football channel on Twitch or listening on LandryFootball.com, if you don't know Luke Fickell's background as Cincinnati's coach, you'd be hard-pressed to find a guy who, if you looked up the definition, quintessential Ohio State guy, you'd be hard-pressed to find a guy different than Luke Fickell. He grew up in Columbus. He started all 4 years as a Buckeye. I think he coached 1 year at Akron, and then he was on the Ohio State staff, moved his way up from position coach to defensive coordinator to interim head coach when they let Jim Tressel go. back to defensive coordinator, and now he's at Cincinnati. But great jobs like the Michigan job, and I still think it's a great job, Andy, don't come open all the time. I think Luke Fickell would rather be the head coach at Ohio State than the head coach at Michigan, but that's a pretty hard job to turn down if it's extended to you.
Yeah, I'd agree, but do you really want to leave what you built at Cincinnati if you're him? I mean, he loves Ohio and recruiting Ohio, and frankly, he's done a lot with that program right now. They're in a really good place where they're going to be dominant in the AAC for a while. But you're right. It's a big time Power 5 gig for Luke Fickell. We've definitely seen Ohio guys cross the border of the rivalry before. Wouldn't be a surprise if he took that job to me, but honestly, with how the challenges that come with it right now, knowing you've got that bear down south to play every year, I don't know if he'd fully want to take it. I think it would be a decision, honestly, for him. I don't think it'd be an instant like, oh, yeah, I want to go to this big-time program.
I just look at it like at Cincinnati, as great a job as he's done, there are things that you can't do there.
Right.
And at Michigan, if you write down on a list, what are the things we can't accomplish at Michigan? The paper's blank. I mean, you can accomplish everything there. And I actually think if you're a guy who relies on Ohio recruits to win, I think there's no better time than now to be a coach anywhere other than Ohio State and get Ohio talent, because Ohio State has ascended to the point where they are perfectly willing to go outside the state and they select the national guys, and that leaves a lot of really good Ohio football players available to you. Luke Fickell's taking advantage of that at Michigan. He's recruiting Ohio better than Harbaugh is.
This is true.
And Luke recruits Florida very well. And so if you can recruit Florida and Ohio as the Michigan coach, and I presume he'd do a very good job in the state of Michigan, I think Luke would do great there. But Matt Campbell will want that job too. Matt Campbell from Iowa State. I don't know. Here's the question. I don't know what's harder or more hard to imagine. Luke Fickell wanting Michigan, or Michigan being humble enough to want Luke?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think. Look, again, Michigan's they're not afraid to get the right guy. I don't think, even if he's an Ohio guy, former Ohio State coach. Bo Schembechler was Woody's assistant.
Yep, and Gary Moeller was an Ohio State captain.
Yep, exactly. So I don't think there'll be any qualms about it. If they think Luke Fickell's their man, they'll go to him regardless of his background. So the other thing though, I want to kind of transition in here. We've talked a lot about Jim Harbaugh, why he's probably not getting extended, or why he shouldn't be at least. I also want to talk about James Franklin. I don't believe he's in a contract here, but sorry, I'm getting a phone call there. Okay. I don't believe I'm not sure he's the right coach for Penn State moving forward. The way they've started, I don't know if you've seen this, the top 10 recruits in Pennsylvania for this class will all be going elsewhere. None of them are going to Penn State. The top 10 recruits. And that's just kind of unacceptable if you're a Penn State head coach. They just lost out on Derek Davis, who's the number 4 player in the state, safety, chose LSU over Penn State and Ohio State. I don't know, that's just kind of, you look at that and you say, how can you not get the top talent in your own state as any coach, And Pennsylvania is not exactly a battleground state typically for football talent in the first place.
No, that's a problem. Whenever I hear that, with a guy who's done well in the past with the talent in his state, I wonder two things. Number one, I wonder if the high school coaches have lost faith in him, and he's maybe gone outside the state to grab some guys, ticked off the high school coaches, his relationships have suffered. The other thing I wonder is, has he gotten to the point where he overlooks the attention to detail, the effort, the work ethic that is required to continue to maintain those relationships, to recruit at an elite level in your state? There are a lot of rumors out there a year or so ago that James Franklin was going to be the head coach at USC. And if you ever get to the point where you start thinking about a job you're going to have instead of the job you have, you're going to start underachieving with the job you have. So I wonder if that might be a part of it too. Now, the USC Arizona State game, breakfast with the Pac 10 on Saturday, broke late for USC. I still wouldn't bet any appreciable amount of money or even a small amount of money with our friends at American Betting Experts that Clay Helton's going to be back as the head coach at USC next year. Nor would I bet any appreciable amount of money that Tom Herman's going to be back at Texas next year. And James Franklin, I would think, would look at those two jobs as a better job than the job he has. And yet he's a hard hire if his team is, 0-3 already. That's a hard sell. But he has enough track record that you could position him to be an improvement certainly over Clay Helton, and I would say he's an improvement over Tom Herman. I think that he'd do okay. But those in-state recruiting failings, that's a red flag. It's a red flag. Great point by you. Let's talk about the surprise team of the Big Ten, Northwestern. Would they be your surprise team of the Big Ten, Andy?
Yeah, to this point, I didn't expect them to get off to a 3-0 start after how they played last year. Of course, Pat Fitzgerald's always got that team going in the right direction on defense. I mean, that Northwestern-Purdue game could be the battle for the Big Ten West this weekend. Kind of crazy to think about. If I told you before the season, hey, the ranked teams in the Big Ten outside Ohio State and Wisconsin are going to be Indiana at 10 and Northwestern, I don't think you would have believed me, Bruce.
No, I wouldn't have. You had Indiana cited early. You were on Indiana. That's why I say they're not the surprise team of the Big Ten with wins over Penn State and Michigan, because you identified them in August. But I don't think any of us identified Northwestern as a team to be 3-0.
No, not at all. I didn't expect Maryland to be 2-1 at this point either. But a big win over Penn State. I don't know what to make of the Big Ten Conference this year outside of Ohio State, really. We know they're the best team, but then everyone else is beating everyone else, and it's just this big mishmash. I can't speak right now, but it's a wild, crazy year in the Big Ten Conference this season, and I guess Ohio State. It's good for Ohio State if you're talking about making the playoffs. It's bad when you're talking about the level of competition, as we've discussed.
Yeah. I'm with you 100% on that. I think it's safe to say there'll be no second Big Ten team in the New Year's Six this year. We want to thank you if you found us on Twitch TV. We apologize for our technical issues earlier. Twitch.tv/The Chris Landry Football Show. Two things today. Hit that follow button. It's the little heart in the bottom right-hand side of the screen. That'll automatically send you a message every time we're live and a link to the show. And secondly, chat with us on Twitch. Say hi. Say anything. We'll give you a shout-out back. Our friends in the Big 12, in defense of the Big 12, coming up at the top of the hour. All right, Andy, we do an annual or a weekly feature here called You Can't Handle the Truth. Do you have something locked and loaded for that? Shall I play you the intro, or shall we skip that this week?
We'll play the intro. I got a little something.
All right, very good. Here we go. All right, Andy, what do you have that falls under the purview of You Can't Handle the Truth this week?
Well, just a little truth here, because he's now at least tied for the favorite in Vegas. I think Justin Fields is the Heisman frontrunner right now.
Wow.
With the game Trevor Lawrence has missed, I said earlier in the season it was Trevor Lawrence's to lose. Well, it's that 2 games for COVID. Your team lost to Notre Dame. He could come back and have Heisman moments in the ACC title game, maybe steal it back then. But as of this moment, I know Mac Jones from Alabama is looking exceptional as well. When you look at Fields, I think two things. One, you talk about a guy who was a Heisman finalist last year and has somehow made a huge jump from last year. Mm-hmm. I didn't going in know exactly how much he could improve, but he has NFL accuracy and ball placement this year. The way he can throw back shoulder to the end zone or hit somebody in their chest coming across the middle, or just I have been blown away by his accuracy. It's reflected by an 87% completion percentage through 3 games. I mean, he only seems to have incompletions when passes are dropped. And it's just insane, the numbers he's put up, the production he's had, 908 yards and 11 touchdowns with no interceptions through 3 games. against at least one quality defense in Penn State. I mean, Rutgers and Nebraska aren't exactly the class of the Big Ten in that area, but I believe the way he's looked. And then the other thing is you talk about value. The thing is, honestly, if Jack Miller or C.J. Stroud or Gunnar Hoke were the quarterback of this team, they aren't a playoff contender. Just because of how bad the Big Ten is, they might still go 9-0 with one of those guys at the helm. I don't think they beat Wisconsin with one of those guys at the helm, but they might have played Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game.
Well, they might not have beaten Penn State.
They might not have beaten Penn State without Justin Fields. So you talk about value, you talk about production, and just you take a guy who was a Heisman finalist last year, and he makes a huge jump. He might even be passing Lawrence in the draft, which I didn't think there was any chance could happen before this season. Because Lawrence is considered a transcendent. You look at what the NFL pundits are saying. He's viewed as this transcendent guy for the league. Justin Fields is starting to go even with him as far as draft stock. I think he's actually pulled ahead in the Heisman race, at least for the time being. He won't have as many chances to put up Heisman moments later, though, is the only concern for him.
Yeah, I don't think that's misplaced at all at this time. I'll be interested to see how Trevor Lawrence bounces back. Watched every bit of that Notre Dame game. Uiagalelei, great numbers, but he misses some things. And I got to believe, on one hand, you look at, he threw for 400 yards. He threw for more yards than anybody ever did against Notre Dame. How could Uiagalelei be the problem? Well, you don't know what he missed in that game, and you don't know that his presence back there. I thought Uiagalelei didn't run the ball enough himself, which Lawrence, as we know, at Ohio State is definitely capable of doing. So what transpires the rest of the year going down to the finish, but Justin Fields is certainly capable. That's going to be an interesting evaluation of those guys. Here's a question from our Twitch audience from Rich Coates. He says, what coaches could you see for Penn State if they choose to move on from James Franklin? Well, I think more likely is James Franklin would choose to move on from Penn State, but it's leave you in the same scenario, Rich. Now, there's a job, Andy, that I think Luke Fickell would be interested in. And I think he fits Penn State really, really well.
Yeah, I honestly, Penn State's main recruiting strategy is to take the Midwest guys. I think Luke Fickell would fit in well recruiting Pennsylvania's top talent, unlike James Franklin this year, apparently. Luke Fickell is honestly just great with any in-state recruits, I think. We've only seen him recruit in-state in Ohio, obviously, because he's been an assistant at Ohio State for so long, and then obviously head coach at Cincinnati, recruited in-state there. But he just has an ability to develop a rapport with high school coaches. We've seen that in the success he's had at Ohio. So I think really when you have Pennsylvania isn't Ohio in terms of football talent traditionally, but they do produce some top players year in, year out. You get a few guys from there that can help your program significantly. And you're right. I think he would just be a culture fit there for what they do. I think he can build on sort of that tradition of excellence that they have between, what Joe Paterno did there for so long. James Franklin has had some success there. He's just sort of fallen off here as of late. So I think really Luke Fickell would be a great hire for them.
Yeah, and I think it'll be some of the same prospects that Michigan will have. So much of this is, who do you jump first? Matt Campbell would be a great hire for them. I'm going to give you another one. I think Jeff Hafley would be a super hire for Penn State. Now, does a guy want to leave Boston College after 1 year? But, man, Jeff Hafley recruiting New Jersey, recruiting the Eastern Seaboard with his charisma in Western Pennsylvania and throughout the state of Pennsylvania, and with the ties that he established at Ohio State, I think Jeff Hafley would be a super hire.
And the Penn State defense. You talk about the pieces they have.
Yeah.
Jeff Hafley is the best defensive coordinator I've seen at Ohio State. Not that I've been around all that long. And Jim Hancock was obviously a very good guy there. But he fits. He would also be a great – I think a defensive-minded coach is traditionally what works at Penn State. They always have really good defenses. And that's what Jeff Halfley is. That's what Luke Fickell is. So I think those would be two great names. Matt Campbell maybe, but I just don't think he fits the way Halfley or Fickell would. I'm not sure Halfley is willing to leave BC after a year, though, if James Franklin moves on from Penn State or vice versa.
Keep in mind, though, Jeff Halfley was hired by Martin Jarmond as AD, and Martin Jarmond left quickly after that and went to UCLA. Guys like to work for the guy who hired him. I'm going to throw another name out there. Bronco Mendenhall at Virginia fits Penn State in a big way. His recruiting area fits Penn State. Bronco Mendenhall, defensive guy, he's done a really good job at Virginia. Another name that'll come up, I'm sure, because he's a hot name, is Dino Babers at Syracuse. Dino Babers does not fit Penn State, in my opinion, like Halfley does, like Fickell does, or like Bronco Mendenhall does.
Yeah, I haven't followed Babers as much as I have the other guys. I think Rocco Mendenhall would also be great. I think you hit the nail on the head with all those names. I was going to bring up Halfley before you did. I didn't even think about Rocco there, but that would be a great hire as well, I think, for them. And you have a better chance to compete at Penn State than you do at Virginia, I think. You were to leave and take that job. The recruiting footprint, the tradition, the ability to compete in the Big Ten, I think, is better than what the situation Virginia has in the ACC.
Okay, Andy, as we get on out of here, the games this weekend, Iowa at Minnesota, that's the Friday night game. We have Illinois at Rutgers. Penn State is at Nebraska. Illinois at Michigan State. OSU at Maryland. And Wisconsin, you said, Wisconsin's at Michigan. Okay, and then Purdue and Northwestern.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an upset in that group? Would it be Indiana at Michigan State? Do you think Indiana can build? Because this is the thing we don't know about programs that make a jump. Is can they keep their mind on their business? Can they stay focused? They've had 2 back-to-back emotional wins at home. Now they have to go on the road. They have to play a Michigan State team. What is Michigan State? Are they the team that lost at home to Rutgers and got pounded at Iowa? Or are they the team that beat Michigan? Should we put any value on winning at Michigan, given what Michigan has done? Because Minnesota can't stop anybody. So Michigan's offense looked great at Minnesota, but Minnesota can't stop anybody. And then Michigan has been just flatter than flat ever since then. Are you calling a Wisconsin win over Michigan? I certainly don't think you're calling an Ohio State loss at Maryland.
No.
But those would be the 3 that I think would jump out here, unless Northwestern winning at Nebraska. If you want to pick the Wildcats this week against Purdue.
Well, yeah, that'll be a pretty evenly matched game, I think. I don't know if you could call an upset there as much.
Yep.
At Purdue, I might actually like Purdue for that game. I think they've got some pieces on offense. Northwestern hasn't really been tested as much yet. I think, that win at Nebraska was impressive, but you only beat Iowa by 1 point. I mean, no one expected you to win that game necessarily, but it was by just 1 point. They've had some close scrapes. So I would actually probably take Purdue in that game. I like what Brom's done with some of the offense there. Purdue has played down to their competition a little bit, blown some leads. You watch that game and you wonder if that can happen again. But I think they'll manage to stay the course this time. Maybe learn some lessons from those games. And that game could end up deciding the Big Ten West, which is crazy to think about. If the winner of that game wins out, they're in. Even Purdue with the game canceled against Wisconsin, you finish 7-0. Wisconsin 6-0. Also, I think Wisconsin, Michigan entirely hinges on whether Graham Mertz is back. If Wisconsin, like you said, is onto that third-string quarterback, I am interested to see how the team bounces back after 2 awful showings against Michigan State, Indiana, Michigan. I mean, Jim Harbaugh says they're close. I don't know what they're close to.
Yeah, they're close to something.
They're close to him getting his walking papers. But I think that really, can you bounce back? If you come out motivated for that game and Wisconsin is on their third-string quarterback, you have a real shot. Especially, they haven't played in 3 weeks. And that layoff after having played one game in the past 10 months can really hurt a team. They could come out rusty and undisciplined. So I think if you can take advantage of that, if you're Josh Gaddis on offense, the defense having had so few reps for Wisconsin relative to your offense now, having played these past 2 weeks, that could be something to watch there, Michigan and Wisconsin. But I think if Graham Mertz is back, there's just too many holes in that Michigan secondary.
Yeah, I just, it's a measure of something that I'm picking Wisconsin at Michigan no matter what. I'm picking Wisconsin to win that game. It's not an upset, but I'm picking Wisconsin. So I'm not sure there'll be an upset in the league this week because you said Northwestern Purdue's not really an upset. Indiana at Michigan State might be close for a half. Penn State and Nebraska, I still believe a little bit in Penn State. I don't believe in Nebraska at all. That might be, if I had to pick one, I might pick Nebraska there. But I don't think Wisconsin winning at Michigan is an upset, but I think that is what we are going to see this week. And that'll do it for Andy and I as we fought through all of our technical issues, Andy, and we'll cobble together the audio from the podcast without all the interruptions and silence. Before we leave, a reminder, go to American Betting Experts. LandryFootball.com is how you get there. Their ad is in the upper right-hand corner of the page. Pick the gaming site legal in your area. Bet MGM, DraftKings, FanDuel, PointsBet. Sign up, receive a deposit match or a risk-free bet from $100 to $1,000. LandryFootball.com. Thanks for watching us on the Landry Football channel on Twitch. And we will be back again next Monday in the same location that time, as today was brought on by COVID concerns with visitors from all places of Arizona coming to visit, which we love the visits, but got to be COVID free and COVID safe, right, Andy?
Right.
Fantastic. All right, my friend, I will see you again on Monday. Everybody have a great week. Talk to you soon.
For sure.
All right, Andy, let me